What is up, guys? This is QRem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm going to bring all of you guys my Pendulum Magician Madolche deck for this November 2015 ban list. Now, ever since a couple of you viewers have mentioned this variant of Madolches to me a couple of weeks ago, it really just was a really cool idea, and I immediately went to go and test some ideas out on YGO Pro, and I'm not gonna lie, this Pendulum Madolche deck is just so much fun. I really do enjoy this deck as much as when I first learned about Brilliant Madolches, in that it just tries to bring Madolches into 2015 and 2016 with the newer mechanics and the newer cards that we have access to, and it's just so much fun. On top of that, it also gives me my Pendulum fix, which is really good because previously before, I haven't really played any dedicated Pendulum deck because desk bots don't really count, and now that I actually have a Pendulum deck of my own, it's just so much fun also. So again, I wanted to just bring you guys all the profile today. So again, without further ado, we're gonna go right into the main deck. Now again, it's 40 cards as usual. Whenever you guys comment that it's not 40 cards, I kind of get baffled because all my decks are usually 40 cards, so just keep that in mind. So we're gonna start off with all of the Pendulum Magicians first. We're gonna have 3 copies of the Wisdom Eye Magician because this is the best magician probably in my opinion to open with, because it essentially is any other Pendulum Magician in your deck because it can help you grab any of them and immediately activate them to your Pendulum skills. So of course we have to have 3 of that for consistency. Then we also have 3 copies of Dragon Pit Magician because this is going to be your go-to high skill because it helps you clear out back row, and again, it's your rank, or excuse me, not your rank, your scale 8 monster. So you also have to have 3 of this again to just help you set up that pendulum scale. Then moving on to the other vanilla, we have 1 copy of Dragon Pulse Magician. Now, this card is alright. The reason why I decided to include it at 1 copy is simply because it is a level 4 spellcaster, so it can help you make Trapeze Magician or any other rank 4 that you might have. And also the benefit of being that low scale is also pretty nice, albeit Oath Dragon Magician does probably outclass it as a better low scale. But again, I didn't want to go without a Dragon Pulse Magician because it does still add a little bit more plays to the deck whenever I do need it. Speaking of Oath Dragon Magician, we have 2 copies of that. Now, this guy is really good, I will say, but I couldn't find the room in this deck to include a 3rd copy. As, again, personally, I would try and find a slot for it, but when I was deck building this deck, I found that probably the 41st card of the deck was going to be a 3rd copy of this. So I opted to just cut the 3rd copy out just for 2 copies, just so I could have that 40 card deck. And again, Oath Dragon is just really good. Being able to recur monsters from your grave whenever you do discard them with Dragon Pit or Dragon Pulse Magician is never a bad thing. And also, again, just having the ability to grab your Wisdom Eye Magicians from your extra deck to, again, fuel those Dragon Pit and Dragon Pulse effects is never really bad. So again, we also have 2 copies of the Oath Dragon Magician. Then for the last 2 magicians we do run in the deck, we have 1 copy of Noble Dragon Magician to give us access to our Meteor Burst Dragon in the extra deck, because that in of itself is a 1 card rank 7 play, which is really cool. So I wanted to include the Noble Dragon in here for that, as well as it's also a level 3. So it does synergize with the Madolche aspect as well a little bit. So we have 1 copy of that. And then also we have 1 copy of Janke Magician because this card has a really nuts reaction with Madolche Queen Tiramisu. And I'll get to that when I get to Tiramisu. But yeah, for now we have the 1 copy of Janke because again, it has a really cool combo in this deck that I wanted to include it for. So that'll be it for all of the Pendulum Magicians in our deck. Moving on to the other generic Pendulums in our deck, we have 3 copies of the Performer Pulse Skullcrobat Joker because this citrus out all of your Magicians, so we have to have 3 of that for consistency. And finally, for the last Pendulum monster we are running, we have 2 copies of the Archfiend Eccentric because I still really love this card just because of how good it is at spot removal. And it's also a really decent high skill because, albeit it is a scale 7, you won't be Pendulum summoning your level 7 monsters all that much and all that often. So I still feel that you can also use Archfiend as a high skill whenever you do need it as well. So again, it just is a pretty decent and versatile card in this deck. So that'll be it for all of our Pendulum monsters in the deck. Moving on to the actual Madolches. We start off with, again, 3 copies of Madolche Mageline because she can search out any of your Madolches. And again, that's really good because whenever you do have your set up Pendulum scale, she essentially acts as a free Madolche onto the board, which can help you, again, get into your Tiramisu plays faster. So again, we have to have 3 of her just for that consistency part of our Madolche engine. Then to follow Mageline up, we have 3 copies of the Madolche Angeli because, again, this is going to be the thing we search off of the Mageline. And again, it's just another pretty important standard card for any Madolche deck. So we have 3 of her. Then moving on to the last few Madolches, which is actually in really weird ratios, we have one copy of the Madolche Hoot Cake. Now, the reason why I only have one copy of this is because majority of the time I felt like I never needed this card. Simply because if you ever get Magellan plus a full Pendulum scale, the thing that would eventually happen would be you'd normal summon the Magellan, search the Angeli, Pendulum summon the Angeli, triplet it off for another level 4 Madolche, which is going to be the Messengelato probably, overlay the Magellan and the Messengelato, make Tiaramisu, and then spin back the Angeli and whatever thing you detached for Tiaramisu's effect. And notice how throughout that whole combo that I just mentioned, I didn't say Hoot Cake once. Simply because of the fact that Hoot Cake is only in here to use whenever you have anything else but a Madolche monster in your graveyard, because you end up not wanting to banish the Angeli that you probably have tributed off for the Hoot Cake, simply because you really need that Angeli into the grave because you want it for your Tiaramisu ammo. And because of that and how Hoot Cakes would probably need to banish the Angeli majority of the time, I felt like multiple Hoot Cake wasn't that good because again, you probably would be banishing the Angeli unless you have something else in your grave. And because of that, I really didn't like it because again, like I said, you really need the Angeli in grave for the Tiaramisu plays. So because of that, I did decide to cut down Hoot Cake to one copy, and I really can't complain about it because again, I just don't want to see it unless I open just the Angeli and I want to get that +2 combo off. But again, outside of that, Hoot Cake isn't really that necessary in this deck, so we do only have one copy of Hoot Cake. Moving on, we only have one copy of the Madolche Mufwe. Now, albeit you can draw into the Mufwe Angeli combo every so often, and that's a really good combo, obviously. The main reason why we're having Mufwe in here is to help us get our Hoot Cake to become a 1-card rank 3, as there are some pretty key rank 3s in the extra deck, which is why I wanted to include at least the one Mufwe, so that our Hoot Cake can become that 1-card rank 3. Outside of that, there isn't really any use for Mufwe, again, outside of the Mufwe Angeli combo and becoming a instant rank 3 with Hoot Cake. But again, I decided to include it because Hoot Cake cannot summon another copy of itself, sadly. So we have the one Mufwe. And then finally, for the last Madolche, we have one copy of Madolche Messengelato, simply because we only have one Madolche spell in this deck, and multiples of it would just end up bricking hands. So because of that, I only opted to go for one Madolche Messengelato to round off all of the Madolches in our deck. Now then, moving on to the other cards of our main deck, we have 3 copies of Performance Damage Juggler because this can help us negate Wavering Eyes, as well as it can help us go into all of our other performances and help us promote our rank 4s in this deck. Speaking of the other performances, we have the one Trick Cloud and the one Hat Tricker again because we really do like to spam rank 4s in this deck. And again, having the Performance Engine in here to help us get +1s off of our Pendulum call, as well as again to just help us promote that rank 4s is really, really strong. Also, I should mention the Hat Tricker is another Earth that we can use to make a Nechuria Beast in this deck. And speaking of Nechuria Beast, moving on, we have the one copy of Glow Bulb, and again, like I said, it helps us get into Nechuria Beast because all of our Madolches are Earth monsters, so we can use Bulb and any Madolche, basically, that is a level 4 to make Nechuria Beast, which can just instantly win you games, as well as it can help us get into some pretty significant Synchros in the level 8 section. So again, we have to have the one Glow Bulb in here because, again, in my opinion, it's a really good card to help you just steal games in this format. So we do have the one Glow Bulb to round off our monster lineup. Moving on to these spells, we start off with 3 copies of Pendulum Call, because this card is freaking busted. I'll be blatant when I say that. This card, God, I can't get over it, how dumb this card is. It's just so strong because it can help you instantly set up your Pendulum Scales, and whenever I basically say instantly set up Pendulum Scales, that card instantly becomes good. So yeah, we have 3 copies of the Pendulum Call because this card is really good. Moving on, we also have 1 copy of the Madolche Ticket as our sole Madolche spell card. Now, I didn't really like Chateau in this deck because unlike Ticket, Chateau cannot get you specific Madolches whenever you do need them, as Chateau can only grab the Madolches from your grave to your hand whenever you are spinning them back with Tiaramisu, and because of that, it doesn't get you and advance you through your game state, as it only gives you back monsters you previously had. And a lot of the time, they're not even the monsters that you want to see, because you really just want to see Magellan. And because of that, I felt Ticket was the only good Madolche spell to include, because again, it can just get you instantly to whichever Madolche you need at any given time, which is 99% of the time going to be Magellan. So that is why I only opted for 1 Ticket. And again, I didn't want to include both Ticket and Chateau, because I had no space. So because of that, I opted just again for the 1 Ticket. Moving on to the other spells, we have 2 copies of Wavering Eyes because this card is degenerate and we need to have it in almost every Pendulum deck because it can just win you a game whenever you successfully resolve it. So we have the 2 Wavering Eyes. And finally, we have the 1 copy of Foolish Burial to help us get our Glow Bulb or any of our performages into the grave whenever we do need them. And then finally, for the last spell, we have one copy of the Instant Fusion. I really would run more if I can find the room. Again, like I said many times, I sadly can't find the room in this deck, so I only have one Instant Fusion. Moving on to the only trap, we have one copy of Emptiness because this card is degenerate, and I'm probably going to say it quite a bit throughout this format that we're going to try and be as degenerate as possible, and Emptiness is probably one of the most degenerate traps we have access to. So again, we have the one Emptiness to round off our main deck. Now then, moving on to the extra deck, we have our two copies of Madolche Queen Tiramisu because she's still really, really good and can get around basically everything in this format. And to mention why I said Janke Magician was included in this deck, the thing is, because Janke Magician can make any rank monster that you have into a level, if you ever have Tiramisu backed up by a ticket, and you ever activate Tiramisu's effect, you can spin 2 cards back from your opponent's field to their deck, activate the ticket, special summon any level 4 Madolche from your deck, and then if you have Janke Magician as a Pendulum scale, you can turn the Tiramisu that you have onto the board into a level 4, and then you can overlay the Madolche Queen Tiramisu with the other level 4 Madolche you just summoned off of ticket, and then make a second Madolche Queen Tiramisu to spin back 4 cards on your opponent's side of the field, which is really, really nuts. And that is why I decided to run the Janke Magician in the main deck, and that's also why I still run the Tiramisu in the extra deck. Alrighty, moving on from that big explanation, we have one copy of Levier because I still feel that whenever you do have the option to use this card to get into your plays, I still feel that it's still really good to get you there because I didn't want to cut it because there were some combos in this deck that I wanted to have Levier for, but I didn't want to run 2 Levier because I felt it wasn't all that necessary, very similarly to Hoot Cake, so that is why I only have 1 Levier in here. And then I also have one copy of Melee of the Trees to help us get to our Glow Up Bulb faster because Glow Up Bulb can get us into Nat Beast and or any of our other Synchro monsters. So again, I wanted to have Melee in here to give our Glow Up Bulb a little bit more consistency. And then moving on to the other rank 4s, we have one copy of Trapeze Magician because it can OTK like crazy. We have the one copy of Abyss Dweller for any graveyard decks. We have the one copy of Diamond Dara for spot removal of things like Anti-Spell Fragrance and whatnot. We have the one copy of Magister Paladin because it's still really good in almost all Pendulum decks. Being able to just grab any Pendulum monster from your deck is just never a bad thing. We have the one copy of Silent Honor Arc because this plus Emptiness is really degenerate. We have the one copy of Castel for really good spot removal. And then finally for the last Xyz monster, we have one copy of Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon. Now, you'll seldom ever make this because you only have the Dragon Pit, the Janke Magician, and the Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon in your extra deck as level 7s. But you end up making this decently enough in the mid to later parts of the game when you can Pendulum summon multiple level 7s. And again, the mid to late parts of the game, this card can just win you the game because it'll put an obscene amount of pressure on your opponent. And I really did like this card in testing, so I did opt to include it in the extra deck for this deck. So that'll be it for all of the Xyz monsters. Moving on to the Synchros. We start off with, of course, the one copy of Natural Beast because making this first turn or making this pretty early in the game can just win you the whole game. So again, we have to have Nat Beast in here for that Glow Bulb support and whatnot. Then we also have the one copy of Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon so we can make it with any level 4 and Noble Dragon Magician. And again, it can become a 1-card rank 7 play if you ever have the Dragon Pit or the Janke in your Pendulum scale. So we have the Meteor Burst in here. Then we also have the one copy of Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Draco Slayer, for our final Synchro monster, because we can make this with Glow Up Bulb and any level 7 monster in our deck. So we can make this, and we should be able to make this, and if we can, we should include it, because this card is basically like a Tiramisu for Pendulum, so that's really good. So that'll be it for all of the Synchros, and then of course for the last Fusion monster, we have the one copy of Elder Entity Norden, because again, we have the one Instant Fusion, so again, we have to have it to support it. And then again, finally, the Yusei token, because I found it from the last video, and I will forever love to show this off. Alright guys, so that will be it for my Pendulum Magician Madolche deck. I will be using this deck quite a bit over the coming weeks, as probably this is my best deck that I have access to right now. And again, it's a hella lot of fun for me, so I will definitely be playing this deck a lot, and I might even bring you guys an updated version if I do end up tweaking the list a little bit more in the future. So again, I hope you all look forward to that, and I hope you all look forward to a few more Pendulum Magician videos coming, because I have a lot of plans for this engine, I really do, and I will be including this Magician engine in a lot of other decks in the future. And again, I hope all of you guys will be looking forward to that. And as always, this is QRim from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out.